The first thing I wanted to go through today was I wanted to look at Norway. Now, there's a couple things that have interested me about Norway. Um, First of all, it tends to rate very highly on the democracy index. It rates very highly on the happiness index. Um, Generally, it seems like the closest society to Utopia that we've got right now. So I'm gonna look at it and we're gonna see how it works. We're gonna look at their democracy. We're gonna look at their economy. They've also, like, I think they nationalized their oil. Now, usually when I think about like nationalized oil, I think about like Venezuela, and it went terribly. But apparently Norway's done it, and it's gone decently well, from what I understand. So we're gonna look into that. I see that Norway is near the top of the Democratic Index. Can you describe and go into detail about their democracy for me, and what makes them such a great democracy? I don't get it. So what was the other thing? Norway did with Equinor and its oil fund. So this is something we got to get into as well. Well, it does that. Democracy index and happiness index. Norway is literally the top. It's 9.81, which is even higher than New Zealand, and I like New Zealand's system. That was the mixed member proportional, which was like a 2-vote system. But honestly, anything over 9 is really good. What's Canada? 8.69. Okay. But like, Norway's basically what they're using as a benchmark. Norway's number 6 on the happiness index. I mean, it's doing a lot right. Finland is top. Finland's on my list, right? Finland, literally next. All right, let's see what we got. That looks right. That looks right. Maybe my camera's too dark. It's fine for now. Okay. So, Norway has topped the Economic Intelligence Unit's Democracy Index for years running, and the latest 2025 edition keeps the Nordic countries anchored at the top. Really? Is it all the Nordic countries up there? Where was that? Ooh, we'll also look at its corruption. I just had it up. Here we go. Yeah, all of them. But Norway is notably higher than the other 2 Nordic countries. 9.3, 9.39, 9.81. Corruption Perceptions Index. So you want a higher score in this one. 81, 80, 88. Rank 2nd, Finland. Ooh. I mean, the Nordic countries all do really well. Okay, I'll leave that up. With Norway leading the ranking at a score of 9.81 out of 10. In the 2024 edition, it earned a perfect 10 out of 10 in 3 of the 5 categories the index measures. So what's actually behind that? Yes, that is what we want to get into. It helps to know what the index is grading. The EIU scores countries across 5 dimensions: electoral process and pluralism. Define pluralism. Pluralism? Yeah, okay. The belief that diverse groups, whether cultural, religious, political, or philosophical, can and should coexist peacefully within the same society. Pluralism. Okay. The electoral process and pluralism, the functioning of governance, political participation, political culture, and civil liberties. Norway scores at or near the ceiling on all 5, and the reasons are structural and cultural rather than the result of any single policy. At durable constitutional foundation. Norway's constitution dates to 1814, making it one of the oldest written constitutions still in continuous use anywhere in the world. Really? Like, I find personally that some of these older documents, like we see this right now in the U.S. with the Constitution, where they want to change the Constitution, specifically about like birthright citizenship, and they can't change it because it's in an old document that was created during the foundation of the country, and so it becomes really hard to change. And so that can lead to issues coming up. But they've clearly found a way to like continue to update their constitution, because like they're the highest ranking democracy. So they've clearly found a way to we'll look into that as we go. It established a clear separation of powers early and has been amended steadily rather than replaced. See, you have to amend it. And honestly, the requirements to amend it can't be too high, or you end up not being able to change it for the modern society. And you end up just like in the US, they're trying to get rid of birthright citizenship because they find it's being abused, and its original purpose it was put in there for is no longer relevant, and they can't change it because it has such high requirements in order to change the Constitution. So it's been amended steadily rather than replaced, giving the system a deep institutional stability. Norway is, stability, probably the most important thing. Norway is a constitutional monarchy. So are we, right? A lot of the constitutional monarchy is a framework for a lot of democracies. The monarch is head of state, but the role is almost entirely ceremonial. The same way it is here, right? We just got a new governor general, which is the representative of the king or queen, in this case king. But again, largely ceremonial position. The monarch is a state, but is almost entirely ceremonial. While real executive power rests with a prime minister and cabinet accountable to parliament. So it sounds like the same system we have here. I'm gonna bring up another instance so I can continue to ask smaller questions while we go through this, because Who is currently Norway's king or queen? Because I was surprised because a lot of country use England because England like conquered everything and then democracies broke off from there, and a lot of them still ceremoniously use the head of England, the king or queen of England, as their monarch, essentially. But the Nordic countries in there I find have their own kings and queens. Norway's current monarch is King Harald V. He's been on the throne since 1991, and at 89 is Europe's oldest reigning monarch. His wife is Queen Sonja, and his heir is Crown Prince Haakon. Okay, well this is we can definitely get a picture of the king, right? Because he's a public figure. Yeah, there he goes. King of Norway. I mean, that's so weird that like kings and queens still exist, even in like ceremonial roles, right? Genuinely representative elections. The Storting. they all have cool names. They all have cool names for it.
Storting.
The Storting. The Storting, Norway's 169-seat unicameral parliament. There it is again, unicameral. Like, that seems to be the way to go. Is elected through proportional representation. I mean, there it is again. It just seems to be that unicameral and proportional representation, these two things together seem to lead to very good results in a democracy. Like this is probably the most important part. So if you don't know, proportional representation, from my understanding, is rather than you vote locally and then you elect someone locally to send, you vote as a nation, and you vote for the party, and votes are calculated based off a nation rather than sending a person in a specific place. This way, like, all votes are equal on a national level. Like in the US, you have like presidents can ignore swing states. I mean, can ignore the non-swing states, and they only have to focus on swing states because there's the only place where elections are decided. As soon as you go proportional representation, you suddenly have to focus on the whole country because every vote matters equally. And that just, it leads to such better results. And it's common, like, where's my proportional representation? This has a spin. It's proportional representation and local representation. They have a 2-vote system. But they have the proportional representation built in as well. And so the two top, and I'm going to keep going down the list, and proportional representation is seems to be one of the necessary things to get to the top of this list if you like democracy. Okay, this matters a lot for the pluralism score. So pluralism was like society cohesion between different cultures, right? The belief that diverse groups, whether cultural, religious, political, or philosophical, can and should coexist peacefully within the same society. Yeah, pluralism, good. This matters a lot for the pluralism score because proportional representation tend to produce multi-party legislatures. Yeah, so proportional representation tends to give you a wider breadth of parties to vote for. And so you're much less likely to get a party that gets over 50% and gets a majority. So it's actually some people say it's a negative, because when a party has a majority, like the Liberals currently do in Canada, they can push through legislation quicker and they can make changes quicker. Like, we're getting a social media ban, and that's likely getting pushed through much faster, because they have a majority. They don't have to negotiate with the other side as much. But multi-party legislatures, there tends to be some slowing down of legislature, of actual laws getting through, but there tends to be compromises, and the laws tend to be better for a wider group of people. So there's definitely negatives, but for proportional representation, the positives far outweigh it. Like, I know Canada here, we've had to talk about it multiple times, switching to like a proportional representation thing, but it always gets shut down by something or another. This is why I personally think for Canada, the New Zealand system would be the easiest to adapt, because you still get that local vote that people like, while getting a proportional representation vote as well. So that's where I think we should switch to, personally. Okay, so proportional representation tends to produce multi-party legislatures where smaller parties win seats in rough proportion to their vote share, rather than being shut out. And this just gets you more voices in your parliament, and allows you to vote for someone who more represents what you actually want to see. And that's just important, in my opinion. The practical result is coalitions and minority governments that have to negotiate and build consensuses, plus a parliament that reflects a wide range of viewpoints. Voter turnout is consistently high by international standards, typically around 77 to 78% in parliamentary elections, which signals a population that feels its participation is meaningful. Right there. Like, that is what proportional representation gives you. It makes participation feel more meaningful. What percentage of voters came out in the last Canadian election? Like, how far behind we were? They brought 77 to 78. Now, the last election in Canada was actually it was polarizing, so because of the whole Trump thing. So we had a higher turnout. It was still only like 70%. Just under 70%. I mean, they still get significantly higher turnouts. Okay. Strong civil liberties and a famously free press. Norway regularly ranks first in the world on press freedom indexes, with a media environment that's pluralistic, well-funded, including public support that preserves editorial independence, and unafraid to scrutinize power. Freedom of expression, assembly, and association are robustly protected, and the judiciary is independent and trusted. I mean, like, that's important. Press freedom indices. Let's have a look at this. Chart, map. Okay. Let's see what we find. Oh, here we go. So this is Reporters Without Borders. And we got scores. Can you see these over here? Yeah, we're good. So we got Norway in the very top by like 4 points. 2. Number 1. Number 1 on all of them except social. Who beats it there? Estonia. Really? Yeah, so we see basically all the normal ones at the top. How's Canada doing? 20th. We're way down there. Even the United Kingdom has more press freedom. What is that? Just under 80. Where's America? 60, 64. How far down do we gotta go? Really? Is this Trump's whole attack on the press that's doing this? Because usually they're like right below us on most of these metrics. Yeah. United Kingdom's a little above France. I always forget that like France owns like parts down here. And like little islands in here. Little dots over here too light up. That's colonialism, right? They still have a bunch of little islands around. How come the United Kingdom doesn't have any little islands? What happened there? Oh. Western Sahara. Okay. Let's continue. Low corruption and high transparency. We looked at that corruption index already. Norway sits near the top of Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index. Public administration is professional and largely insulated from patronage. Okay, so does this mean like that no money in the in their election process or in their public administration? They don't allow money into there. What is that called again? Or what do they call it in the US? When you spend money. Oh, gosh, that word's escaping me. What is the word when you give money to a politician? Like, right there. Like, giving money to a politician, like that. To me, that feels like corruption. Lobbying. I don't know why that word escaped me, but there it is. Though that's a bit different. It refers to trying to influence politicians, which can involve money, but legally goes to advocate efforts rather than into the politician's own pockets. I mean, like, that's basically, lobbying is basically giving money to politicians. That's what it is. I might get into that after. Let me see. Lobbying. We'll just add that. Okay. Insulated from patronage. Freedom of information laws are strong, and even the country's enormous sovereign wealth fund, built on oil revenues, is managed with unusual openness. Clean, effective governance is exactly what the functioning of government category rewards. A consensus-oriented political culture. This is the harder to measure ingredient, and arguably Norway's real edge. There's a deep reservoir of public trust in institutions and elections, and to a meaningful degree between citizens. Politics tends towards negotiation and compromise. This is just what you get with a proportional representation system. Rather than winner-take-all confrontation, the system we use in Canada, a comprehensive welfare state and comparatively low economic inequality reduce the kind of grievances and polarization that erode democratic norms elsewhere. Really? Gini index chart. Oh. Try it again. Gini coefficient chart. Maybe chart's not the right word. Map. Gini coefficient map. Here we go. So the higher the number, the more inequality. You go to somewhere like South Africa where they got a 0.54. I think a 1 means one person holds all the wealth, and a 0 means perfect. Like everyone has the same amount of wealth. And so you could tell the inequality in the country just by like, communism is supposed to be 0, right? Like that everyone has the same. And then you look at the countries that like the Chinese Communist Party. It's not communist. Look at that. Look at their Gini coefficient. That's not a communist country. Look at Russia. The exact same. That's not a communist country. They call themselves that, but they're definitely not. You got to get to like a 0 if you wanna be communist. Belarus, actually pretty good. Like we use these ones as the staple, right? 0.27, 0.29. I don't think communism is the way to go, but a 0.27 I think is a good score. Like anything under 0.3, because you do run into the issue where if there's no monetary gain to working hard and trying to get ahead, then people don't do it. And so communism in its pure form doesn't work. You need a mix of a capitalist where based on your skills and education, you got different levels of income, different levels of wealth. But a system that like the low tier should still be able to afford homes and be able to live a good life, right? And so you want to keep inequality from going out of control. Anything under 0.3 I think is really good. What are we? 0.31. That's pretty good. Our highest was 0.37. Doing pretty good. What's the US? 0.42. I mean, slight differences in this number mean a huge difference in the inequality charts. Like that's really bad. Brazil, really? I didn't know Brazil was so unequal. Russia 0.36. Anyway, Norway, we were looking at 0.27. How do I flip this? I don't want to look at the worst. I want to look at the best. Oh, there's actually quite a few in here that are pretty good. Ukraine. India. Does good with inequality. Belarus. That one surprised me because Belarus is a dictatorship, right? Okay. Let's continue. Conversation content temporarily unavailable. Please retry. We're just gonna keep going. Decentralized local democracy through municipalities, strong civil society, and a tradition of including groups like the indigenous Sami, who have their own elected Sami parliament, all reinforce the sense that the system is broadly inclusive. Put together, these features create a reinforcing loop. Representative elections produce accountable governments. Accountable governments sustain trust, and trust sustains high participation. One worthwhile caveat for the sake of clear-eyed picture, some commentators, including Norwegian ones, argue that indices like the EIUs can over-flatter top performers since the scores blend hard indicators with expert judgment, and a near perfect 9.81 can obscure real shortcomings. Debate in Norway over bureaucratic accountability, local government failures, or the concentration of power are real and ongoing. The index is best read as a strong comparative benchmark rather than a literal measure of a 98% perfect democracy. That doesn't undercut Norway's standing so much as add nuance to it. Okay, I want... Can you explain a proportional representative government to me? What were the things that it said? Bureaucratic accountability, local government failures, or the concentration of powers are real and ongoing. So these are things that I probably want to look into, because these are the things that are not going well there. Let's see. Yeah. We'll let it finish. So, Norway uses proportional representation, unicameral, the Storting. The Storting is Norway's 169-seat unicameral parliament, is elected through proportional representation. At its core, proportional representation is a simple promise. The share of seats a party wins in the legislature should match the share of votes it receives from the public. If a party gets 30% of the votes, it should get roughly 30% of the seats. That sounds obvious, but it's actually a deliberate design choice. And the easiest way to see that makes it distinctive is to contrast it with the main alternative. The contrast that makes it click: many countries, Canada, the US, and UK, use what's called first past the post, or single member districts. The country is carved into many small districts, each electing one representative, and whoever gets the most votes in that district wins the seat outright. Everyone who voted for a losing candidate gets, in effect, no representation from that district. This can distort the national picture badly. A party can win 15% of the votes spread across the country and end up with almost no seats, because it came in second or third in lots of places without winning anywhere. Conversely, a party with concentrated regional support can win a large block of seats with modest national vote share. Proportional representation is built to eliminate that mismatch. Instead of one winner per district, it uses larger districts that each sends multiple representatives, and seats within them are divided up according to vote proportions. Okay, so instead of one district, it essentially combines a bunch of districts. Like, you would combine all the districts in Alberta together, and then based off the votes from all Albertans, you would divvy up the seats to the Conservatives, the Liberals, the NDP, and whatever other party might now be able to step in, because rather than winning in one district, you just have to get a certain percentage of votes across a much wider area. And this gives you more representation and allows new parties and new voices to come in. Which is the point to it. It uses larger districts that each send multiple representatives. Okay, a concrete example. Imagine a district that elects 10 representatives and the votes come in like this. Yeah, okay, so that's just clean. I imagine you probably want larger districts than that, though. Under first past the post, Party A with 40% might have won the single seat, and the other 60% of voters would get nothing. Under proportional representative, okay. That kind of explains it. This is kind of just going on. It brings up multi-member proportional system, which is New Zealand's. I like that one because it combined first past the post and proportional representation together, and it did so in a good way. All right, I'm gonna take this off for a little bit. Debates in Norway over bureaucratic accountability, local government failures, or the concentration of powers. Can you go into some more details about the issues that the Norwegian democracy is having? What's the issue with bureaucratic accountability, local government failures, or the concentration of power? Here we go. Let's have a look. Let's see. Democracy Index. I've got this one saved. Yeah, I also wanted to ask. It talked about their First Nations community, the Sami or something? Sami. Am I saying that correctly?
Sammy.
Okay. We will. I'll ask about that next. Okay. I kind of want to just skim through this part. Bureaucratic accountability, the NAV scandal. If you want one case that crystallizes Norway's accountability problem, it's the NAV scandal. I like these words.
Trygdeskandal.
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 Trygdeskandal. The NAV scandal. Trygdeskandal. Which broke in 2019 and is widely called the biggest scandal in modern Norwegian history. Here's what happened. NAV, the agency that administers around a third of the state's budget, required certain benefit recipients, people on sickness, unemployment, or care allowances, to physically remain in Norway and prosecuted those who traveled to other European countries while receiving payments. Okay. What? Like you're giving people benefits so that they stay in so you have to stay in the country to receive the benefits. Like I don't see what's wrong with that. Maybe I'm missing something. This practice ran for roughly 25 years and disregarded the EU EEA's free movement laws, which Norway is bound to follow as a member of the European Economic Area. Oh. I'm pretty sure Canada does the same thing. Like if you're on like social support, you can't be outside of Canada for like a long period of time. Right? If you're on some kind of social support in Canada, are you allowed to leave the country? I don't think you are. Like, I think you're allowed to leave, like, if you're doing, like, a weekend visit or something, but, it's, temporary. Like, it has to be very temporary. The short answer, you're always legally free to leave the country. Yep. There's no room confining you to Canada. The real question is whether your benefits keep flowing while you're gone. And that depends entirely on which program you're on. Okay, so let's see. For employment insurance, EI, regular 6, the general rule is that you must stay in Canada to keep receiving benefits because you have to be available and actively looking for work. Okay. There's a narrow exception if you can show you're reachable about a job opportunity and able to return to Canada within 48 hours, your availability can be accepted. So like if you're temporarily leaving, I don't think it's a problem. But generally you must remain in Canada. A few special EI benefits are more portable, maternity, parental, compassion care, and the family caregiver benefit can be paid while you're outside Canada. For provincial social assistance in Alberta, that's income support or AISH, the programs are generally meant for people residing in the province and extended absences. So basically, Canada does this, and their NAV scandal, so their big scandal, the biggest legal scandal in modern Norwegian history, is that they didn't follow an EU law. They wouldn't give people benefits if they left the country. Like that doesn't seem like too big of a scandal. What's going on? Maybe I'm missing something here. But like generally, if you're a nation and you're providing benefits to people, they should be in your country, right? To physically remain in Norway and prosecute those who travel to other European countries while receiving payments. I mean, I think you should do that. But I guess if they've signed like an EU, so sometimes when we look at the EU, we got to think of it more like the United States, where the countries within the EU function like states, and there is an overarching European Union rule set, or if compared to like the United States, a federal government, right? It's like that, but the states in the EU would have a lot more leeway than states in the United States would have. So it's not a direct comparison, but you do got to look at it that way at times. And so they're not following, in this case, what would have been a federal law at a state level. And so that's kind of where they got the pushback. Right? I think that's how it works. The scale is staggering. Around 70 to 80 people were wrongfully convicted of welfare fraud. Ooh. being convicted of welfare fraud. Some serving prison time. Oh. I mean, that, to me, that one is like, did you know you weren't supposed to leave? Like, did they tell you you can't leave while you're receiving these? And you still did it? Because if you still do it, I got no problem with them charging you. But like, if you didn't know, and that come out of nowhere and blindside you because you were under the impression of EU or EAA rules, that's scary. Well, roughly 7,500 people received incorrect decisions, denying benefits or demanding payments. I mean, I personally think that if you're receiving welfare from a nation, you should have to stay in the nation. Like, you can travel outside the nation for like a weekend if you need to go somewhere, see family or something. But generally, if you're receiving welfare, you should be in the nation. That's how Canada does it. But because of EU EAA rules, you have to treat the entire European Union as a nation in this case. The deepest problem for accountability is that this wasn't one rogue agency. The wrongful interpretation passed through NAV, the public prosecutors, and the courts, including the Supreme Court itself. If your Supreme Court, like, is it a wrongful interpretation if it's the interpretation of your Supreme Court? That just sounds like law to me. For years without anyone catching it. Oh gosh. So like the EU just never figured out that one of the countries wasn't following their law. When multiple independent institutions that are supposed to check the others all fail in the same direction for a quarter century, it points to a systematic blind spot rather than an individual lapse. Like, absolutely. They clearly wanted, they did not want to follow the EU EEA free movement laws when it came to the welfare system. And when you provide a good welfare system to your people, you wanna keep it contained because it is a lot of money you're providing to them. You don't want people to become a member of your country and then instantly leave for another country once they get on your welfare system. Like, that's not something you want to encourage. So I mean I kind of side with the with the Norwegians here. What makes it an ongoing accountability story is the aftermath. Norwegian courts acknowledged the systematic violation, but largely denied government or NAV leadership culpability. And in the 2025, the Supreme Court of Appeals Committee rejected the victim's appeal, with the surviving plaintiffs taking the case to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. So even when they got caught, they didn't want to stop. Like, no, we don't want to give social support to people that don't live in our country. We don't want to do it. Completely understandable. Tragically, some victims have died waiting for redress. The critique here is that Norway's institutions are excellent at delivering services, but weaker at holding themselves to account when those services fail catastrophically. There's no easy mechanism for the citizens to force consensus on the bureaucracy. This isn't an isolated worry either. The Council of Europe's anti-corruption body has recommended Norway introduce stronger accountability and enforcement mechanisms to prevent corruption among senior officials, ministers, political advisors, and police. A notable gap for accountability that scores so well on corruption perception. Okay, I wanna talk about the NAV scandal a little more. So let me get this right. The nav scam. Stop. Let me get this right. The nav scandal in Norway was that they didn't want to pay social service programs to people that were not inside their own country. From my understanding, that's how Canada currently functions. How is this a scandal? Let's let it figure that out. Okay. Before we dig into that, concentration of power, closed party list, and ministerial conduct. Two distinct issues sit under this heading. The first is structure and ties directly back to the proportional representation we discussed. Norway used closed party list, meaning voters at the national level choose between parties rather than ranking individual candidates. Okay, so rather than like voting on a president, they vote on a party. Okay, critics argue this concentrates real selection power inside party organizations. Roughly, so they say, critics argue that voting for people rather than parties is a better democratic system. Roughly 2,500 party delegates nationwide effectively decide the ranked candidates list that determines who sits in parliament. The effect is to shift influence away from the voters and towards internal party hierarchies. Yeah. That happens. So when you vote for a party, the party gets to decide who gets to go to actually be in the Stortening or whatever it's called. their actual parliament. Okay. I can see that. Rewarding loyalty and internal network over independent appeal to the electorate. So then, is there like people that campaign? Is there like heads of these parties? I guess even then, the head of the party gets to pick other loyalty members to put in for their other seats. But proportional representation is always like that, right? I can see like the New Zealand system, mixed member proportional. You had local candidates run, and then the candidates that win, obviously, based on the number of votes you got, they'd come in and fill that. And then the candidates that lost, you had a list, and you had your list of the people that you were going to put in based on how many seats you got totally. And in the end, there was more seats available than there was local running, and so you usually got the top up generally, which was just I think it's just a good way of doing it. Internal party hierarchy, rewarding loyalty and internal networking over independent appeal to the electorate. So the same PR system that makes the legislator beautifully representative of party vote shares also, paradoxically, hands party machines a lot of gatekeeping power over individual careers. This is a contested critique. Defenders note votes can still push parties at the ballot box, but it's a real structural debate. Okay. I mean, that's just give and take of the proportional representation system. Now, if you, instead of a party, you were forced to vote on, like, I mean, like, I don't think you need a huge party nowadays. Like, I personally would prefer a proportional representation system where you vote for a person. And if that person gets 20 or 30% of the votes across your country, then when you go to parliament, they get 20 or however many of the votes they got, whatever percentage of votes they got, they get that percentage of weight in voting on legislation, right? And in that case, you're electing individuals instead of electing a party. But I don't know. That just seems more representative to me. Did I ask too many questions and I don't get to the bottom of them? So the proportional representation systems that I've looked at all have it where you elect a party. Are there any proportional representation systems where you elect an individual instead of a party? Okay. Where are we? The second is a remarkable run of conflict of interest scandals that expose weak enforcement of conduct rules. 2023 was extraordinary. An unusually large number of scandals, most involving conflicts of interest. I mean, that's conflict of interests are always going to show up in government. How you mediate and handle them is what's important. By current and former ministers, forced multiple cabinet registrations. I mean, that is how you handle them when you have conflicts of interest. Cultural Minister Annette Trettenbergsten resigned after handing jobs to friends. I mean, like, yeah, you shouldn't be doing that. My mother worked for the federal government for a while, and she was processing claims for the federal government, and whenever she recognized the name, she was not allowed to process that claim in any way. She had to instantly send that claim back and have it reassigned to someone else whenever there was a name of someone she recognized. Like, if you are deciding something and there's a conflict of interest, you don't make the decision. You give it to an independent third party to make a decision. This is how it works. Like that's just what you're supposed to do. Like, you create an independent commission, and if it gives the job to your friends, then you're fine. But if you do it yourself, you're gonna get shit. Research Minister Orla Bortenmo stepped down after buying stock in a defense company shortly before a meeting awarded a contract to a subsidiary. This is just like this one. That's just how the U.S. works. They've legalized this part of it. So if you're in Norway, you have to resign for a conflict of interest. And if you're in the U.S., it's just part of the course. It's part of the advantage of being in their parliament. A key Norwegian concept here is being inhabile, particularly towards someone such that you can't make objective merit-based decisions. Notably, two ministers like you. By the way, you want to be like Norway, not the U.S. They're at the top of the ranking for a reason. Like, if you have a conflict of interest, you delegate that to a third party. If you don't, you should be forced to resign. Notably, two ministers committed broader or similar breaches, but only one resigned, with the PM drawing a distinction between their cases. Okay, we're gonna continue on. Local government failures. This one is subtler and more about demographic quality than outright disaster. First, a forced amalgamation controversy under the Solberg government. Norway pushed through a major municipal and country reform, merging local governments, often over local objections. It proved so contentious that it was partly reversed. A partial reversion of the municipal and country reform took effect on. Okay, I'm not going to understand the local government issues here. The thorough line. If there's a single thread connecting all three, it's that Norway's weakness clusters on the accountability side rather than the participation or liberty side. Elections are clean, the press is free, turnout is high, rights are protected. That's the part the index captures well and genuinely earns the high score. The softer spots are in holding power to account after the fact. A bureaucracy that can err systematically for decades. I mean, like, I don't know if they were erring. I think that was a deliberate choice. Like, that was just a deliberate disagreement. If you're getting our social programs, you gotta stay in our country. And if you leave, we will take them away. And I don't care what the EU says. Conduct rules for the powerful that get applied unevenly. Party structures that concentrate candidate selection and local accountability quietly eroding as governance gets more managerial. None of this is vigorous. None of this is regime threatening. And Norwegian media and civil society surface these problems vigorously, which is itself a sign of democratic health. But it's a useful correction to the idea that a near perfect score means a near perfect democracy. And Norway commentators themselves are often the sharpest critics on exactly these points. Okay, what was I getting to here? The NAV scandal. You've zeroed in on the exact right question, and the answer is genuinely subtle. The scandal is not that Norway has a resident/presence requirement. Lots of countries do, including Canada. Okay. Your instinct is sound, and the search confirms Canada does restrict some benefits by presence in the country. GIS stops after you're out of Canada. Okay, I think we've gone through this ourselves. Norway was breaking a law it had signed up to. Canada isn't bound by any equivalent. You hear that, Norway? You don't get to make this law. You've signed an agreement. This is the crux. Norway is part of the European Economic Area, which binds it to the EU free movement rules and its social security coordination regulation. Under that law, for certain benefits, a recipient has the right to travel or to stay temporarily in another EEA country without losing the payments. Norway domestic, you must stay in Norway rule directly contradicts the higher EEA law it was treaty bound to follow. So NAV was enforcing a rule that was itself illegal. But basically, if we look at it in context of like the United States or Canada, you have a state law and a federal law, or provincial law and a federal law contradicting each other. Norway was just essentially using the state law and got away with it for years. I mean, like, I personally agree with them. Like, if you're getting social services from a country, I think that country has the right to put a requirement. No, you must stay in the country to receive these benefits. But they signed a European Economic Area law, which says that they don't get to do that. Canada has no parallel. Yeah. I'm not going to go further into this. What was I asking over here? The proportional representation that I've looked at all have where you elect a party. Okay, where you elect an individual instead of a party. I want to see this. Yes, and there's one system in particular that's the clean answer to your question. The single transferable vote. STV. Under single transferable vote, you don't vote for a party at all. You rank individual candidates in order of preference. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And those candidates can be from the same party, different parties, or independents. So there's still a party system, but you're not voting for a party, you're voting for a person. The ballot doesn't organize them by party as the unit of choice. Proportionality emerges from the mechanisms. Districts elect multiple members. A candidate needs to reach a vote quota to win, and surplus votes from winners plus votes from eliminated low scores transfer to each voter's next preference. So basically, you get to vote if your first preference isn't going to get a seat, that's crossed out, and you look at your second preference. If your second preference also isn't going to get a seat, it's crossed out, and you're now voting for the third person who is getting a seat, hopefully. Usually, I imagine the vast majority of people vote for someone who's going to get a seat. Like you're probably voting for one of the more popular candidates, because I mean that's what makes them popular candidates, right? Okay, where the heck was I? Surplus votes. Okay. The party level proportionality is essentially a byproduct of all those individual rankings. So you vote for a person, that person gets so many votes, and that is then a part of their party. Not something the system calculates directly. Ireland and Malta use it for their national parliaments, and Australia uses it for its Senate. Ireland and Malta. STV, huh? STV system. I'll leave that there. Use it for their national parliaments, and Australia uses it for its Senate. This is genuinely a PR system, proportional representation, where you elect people, and parties are almost incidental to the machinery. So you elect a person, and the party is attached to the person. I mean, they're pretty high. 8th. Okay. So they're on my list. Then there's a middle category worth noting about open list proportional representation. Here, seats are still allocated to parties proportionally based on the party's total vote. So the party is doing some of the work, but you vote for a specific individual candidate, and your personal votes determine which individual within the party actually gets the seats. Personal votes. So this is similar to New Zealand, rather than the party brass deciding the order, as in the closed list system you've been looking at. Finland is the striking example. I mean, that's the next one on the list. You literally cannot vote for just the party there. You must pick a named candidate, and that vote counts towards the party seat total and towards the person's own ranking. Brazil. Poland and others work similarly. Cool. So this isn't the same as New Zealand. New Zealand was a local vote and a proportional representative vote. This is a single vote for an individual, and you're voting not only for the party that individual is representing, but for that individual within that party to lead the party. And so in a way you get to vote for a party and for the person who runs the party. And then in Canada and in the US, there's like a primary system where you pick the leaders of the parties elsewhere outside of the election, and usually just by people who are members of the party. And this is just a general vote. You vote for the party and for who you want to lead the party at the same time, by the sounds of it. Anyway, I'm sure we'll learn more about that system when we talk about Finland, because that seems to be what they use. Single transferable vote. I'm gonna get the name of that down too. Single transferable vote. Okay. A couple of honorable mentions that blend the two. Mixed member proportional. We looked at this for New Zealand. It's also used in Germany. Cool. Patronage.
Panachov.
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 Panachov. Systems like Switzerland and Luxembourg go even further towards the individual. You get multiple votes you can spread across candidates from different parties, even doubling up on favorites. Oh. How does Switzerland do? I mean, they're on my list, right? Yeah, so I'll get to them eventually. Panacha. If your goal is proportional outcome, but I'm choosing humans, not logos. Single transferable vote is the textbook answer, with Finland's open list as the runner-up. Okay. There's something else I wanted to ask. Oh. Can you compare Norway's democracy to Canada's for me? And give me a list of the pros and cons for each. Well, we'll go quickly through this one. I like the single transferable vote system, but is there a way to remove the party element from it entirely and instead just vote for an individual, and then that individual has that much power in the legislature? What would a system like this look like? Clearly. Oh. I like the single transferable vote system, but is there a way to remove the party element entirely? Is there a way for you to have a system where you vote for an individual and then that individual has that power within the legislature based on the percentage of their vote? What would a system like this look like? Let's see what it comes up with there. Okay. Comparing the democracies, Bones Country are ambiguously in the top tier. Full democracies with free elections, independent courts, free press, and peaceful transfers of power. Norway ranks number 1 on the democracy index, and Canada sits high in the full democracy group. Here we go. So Norway, proportional representation, first past the post. Single party, majority, minority for Canada. They have coalitions and minority and some multi-party. Okay, let's skip that. You can go through that if you want. We're going to go to Norway pros. Proportional representation makes legislative mirror how people actually voted, so very few votes are wasted, and even small parties win seats proportional to support. Consistently tops global democracies and free press rankings with very low corruption and unusually high public trust in institutions. High voter turnout. Okay, so this is basically all the stuff that we just learned. Federalism distributes power across provinces, letting regions tailor policy and act as testing grounds, which suits a vast, diverse country. I mean, we've seen this in Saskatchewan started the single-payer healthcare system before it was adopted federally. Saskatchewan, because it gives so much more power to the provinces, that provinces are allowed to try stuff like that out. It was successful there, and it became something that was adopted across the entire country. So that is, there are certainly pros there. Okay. The deepest difference is the electoral system, and it captures the whole trade-off. Norway optimizes for representativeness. Okay. Let's start this again. The deepest difference is in the electoral system, and it captures the whole trade-off. Norway optimizes for representativeness. Its parliament faithfully mirrors the electorate at the cost of slower, negotiated coalition governance. Canada optimizes for decisiveness and regional accommodation. Clear single-party government and a federal structure that holds a huge, diverse country together at the cost of electoral results that often don't match the popular vote. Norway's weak spots cluster around accountability and concentrated party, EEA power. Canada clusters around proportionality, the unselected Senate, and executive dominance. Neither is simply better. If you weigh a parliament that precisely reflects voters and a high trust consensus culture, Norway looks ideal. If you weigh managing scale, deep diversity, and regional self-government, Canada's federal model does work that Norway's system has never been asked to do. Would a proportional representation or a mixed member proportional system work for Canada? Would there be unintended consequences? Like maybe I'm missing something here. Okay. Well, we'll talk about that. I keep telling myself I got to keep these under an hour. And then it just drag on. Last question, and then I'm gonna move on. It's doing a lot of searching. What was I asking here? Yeah, but like, okay. Here's the next question we're gonna go into. But I consider that a different topic. So I can cut everything and split the topic. Great question, and it's a live one in Canada right now. After the April 2025 election, Prime Minister Mark Carney said he was open to pursuing election reform once the economic crisis was dealt with. I mean, that kind of sounds like you're kicking it down the road, which revives a debate that's been dormant since the Liberals abandoned their 2015 promise to make the last first past the post election. Let me walk through how each system would actually be built for Canada, because the country's geography and federal structure shape the design heavily, and then the consequences. Why pure list PR is a poor fit, and MMP is the usual Canadian proposal. I mean, MMP is, if you're a first past the post system, it's easier for people to understand because it keeps the first past the post element in it while giving you a proportional representation element to it. You basically get 2 votes, and one is the one you've always done, so everyone understands it, and the other one is just voting for the party you like, so easy. And for most people, they just keep it consistent. You want this person and they're with this party, but you do get people that split the ticket and they vote. They know how to use their vote, so they know how to use their local vote, and they know how to use their proportional vote. And if you know how to use them better, you can get better results. The simple proportional representation, pure party lists where you vote for a party and seats are handed out in proportion across a big region, runs into 2 hard Canadian realities. First, the local MP riding bond is deeply valued here, and that is what you get to keep in the other system. Voters expect a specific person accountable to their community. Yep. And pure list PR severs that. Second, geography. Some ridings are already the size of countries. None of it alone is enormous. And pure PR would mean collapsing those into even larger multi-member regions, which is impractical for the north and rural areas. That's why nearly every serious Canadian reform proposal, including the model the Law Commission of Canada recommended back in 2004, has favored mixed member proportional instead. The mixed member proportional is specifically designed to keep the local link and add proportionality. This is why I like it. How mixed member proportional would actually work. You split the House into 2 kinds of seats. Okay, so I'm not going to go into this because this is just describing mixed member proportional, which we've done in the video on New Zealand, right? Party votes, what makes it proportional? Yeah. Okay, the big Canadian design wrinkle is federalism. The Constitution guarantees each province a floor of seats, so you almost certainly couldn't run one nation proportional pool. You'd have to do it a provincial pool. You'd have to do the proportional province by province. That makes sense. That works fine in Ontario or Quebec, but it's a real problem in small provinces. Prince Edward Island has only 4 seats. Oh, that's right. Prince Edward Island has only 4 seats. That kind of gets rid of the proportional representation element. I think you'd almost have to combine, because there's a bunch of tiny provinces. You got like Nova Scotia over there too. Where else? There's a map. Google, show me the Google map in Canada. Come on. Because you got like Prince Edward Island, you got Nova Scotia, you got New Brunswick. I'd say you'd almost have to combine. They're all very geographically close and similar. Newfoundland too. Like you might have to combine those into one proportional zone in order to get enough candidates that proportional representation would matter. I mean, you'd probably have the same issue with none of it in the Northwest Territories, right? Yukon. Um, but they cover such a large area already. There's definitely some wrinkles you'd have to figure out, right? Yeah. So the smallest provinces would stay effectively majority no matter what. You'd also either have to enlarge the House or make existing ridings somewhat bigger to fit the top-up seats, both politically touchy. I mean, I think you should get rid of the Senate. And then the seat, essentially from the Senate, you roll into the House, and then you can make the House larger to fit the system. That's how I think you do it. What it would fix... The distortions proportional representative targets are real and reoccurring. In 2019, the Conservatives won slightly more votes than the Liberals nationally, but the Liberals took far more seats and formed government. The system handed the runners-up the win. The system handed the runner-up the win. In 2025, First Past the Post shut NDP and Green voters out of seats in Ontario entirely, and over-rewarded the leading party in places like Saskatchewan, where proportional counts would have spread the seats across 3 parties instead of nearly sweeping them to 1. There's also an underappreciated benefit specific to Canada. Proportional representation would likely reduce regional polarization within party caucuses. Today, a governing party can be almost shut out of an entire region despite having real support there. Like, in Alberta, the Liberals have almost no support. Like, almost no seats. Like, they don't win any districts. They have decent support. Like, it's still Canada. The Liberals still, they still get a certain number of votes. But the number of seats they get does not represent nearly anywhere near the number of votes they actually get, because they don't win the seats. Think Liberals winning few prairie seats, yeah, or Conservatives winning few big city seats. Exactly. So the exact opposite thing that happens here in Alberta, big cities, the opposite happens. Proportionality would give each major party at least some MPs from every region, making caucuses less geographically lopsided, a genuine plus for national cohesion. Like, when all votes matter, you have to represent the country, rather than a slice of the country, because you need votes from everywhere. This is an issue, like, it's more prevalent in the US because we see like, presidents in the US or people running for president can completely ignore non-swing states because they don't matter. They don't matter in the voting system. Spend your time in the swing states where votes actually matter. And as soon as you switch to a proportional representation system, all votes matter. You now have to represent your whole country. And so you have to speak to, and you have to come up with policies that help the entire country, rather than like pushing Intel to open data centers and invest into swing states, because, you know, that's where the votes matter. That's where you want people to see the economic benefit so that they vote for you. Which, from what I understand, is what's happening in the US. The unintended consequences, this is where it gets interesting, and several cut in both directions. Lower barriers help fringe and populist parties. I mean, everyone, like, what's wrong with populist parties? I don't get it. Aren't like, shouldn't they be fighting to be populist? is it populist? Like, meaning the people support you? I've never understood why people look at this as a negative. Under first past the post, a party like the People's Party can win 5% nationally and 0 seats. Under proportional representation, it would get seats and a parliamentary platform. Exactly. A threshold, say 5% limit this, but doesn't eliminate it. And yeah. So sometimes they have a threshold of what you need to get seats. And reasonable people disagree on whether amplifying smaller voices is a feature or a risk. I think it's good. I want more voices. I want differing opinions within my government. Because, like, what if they're right? And we need to turn the ship. I want the voice there. Single party majorities would essentially vanish. Yep. Canada already runs minorities often. 6 of the last 8 governments. Proportional representative would make outright majorities almost extinct, meaning near permanent coalitions or confidence and supply bargaining. That can mean more cooperation and compromise, or slower decisions and more leverage for smaller kingmaker parties, depending on your priorities. There's give and takes. I usually think compromise generally leads to better results. And we see that when you look at things like this. Generally, the more representative a democracy, the better their score. So usually it just leads to better results for everyone. Power shifts towards party machines. This is the exact closed list problem we discussed with Norway. Whoever controls the party list controls which pop-up MPs get seats. Yeah, but remember, you'll have more parties to choose from. Concentrating influence in party leadership and rewarding loyalty over local appeal. Some mixed member proportional designs use open list or best runner-up rules to soften this. I mean, good idea to use that. 2 classes of MPs and a muddier accountability line. Local MPs answer to a riding, list MPs answer to the party. Voters can find it unclear who actually represents them, and list MPs can be seen less legitimate. A frequent complaint in places that use mixed member proportional. I mean, I still think it's better. But we're looking at the downsides. The federalism cap means it only ever partly proportional. Because proportionality has to run within provinces, the smallest provinces, they distort it. I mean, there's ways to fix this. But I definitely see where this one's coming from. So Canada could never be as cleanly proportional as a unitary state like Norway. The result is a hybrid that satisfies neither purist nor traditionalist fully. Again, like, this could be fixed. This is something you could fix. When you first create it, it would probably not be fixed. But then I imagine the dissatisfaction towards this element, you'd probably see some of the territories combine their systems to give them better representation. But I definitely see where that's coming from. Reform itself is politically treacherous. Every recent provincial attempt, British Columbia 3 times, Ontario PEI, was put to a referendum and failed. And the governing party that benefits from first past the post rarely has an incentive to change it. I mean, you see this everywhere. This system elected me. Why the system's great. I got elected. Why would I change it? That's largely why Trudeau's promise died. There was no consensus on which system, and any change advantaged some parties over others, so the debate collapsed into self-interest. Yep. The bottom line, mixed member proportional is the model most likely to fit Canada because it preserves the local MP and adds fairness. But the federal structure forces compromises that make it messier than the textbook version. The deepest trade-off, and the one we keep circling back to, you'd gain a parliament that's far better reflects how Canadians actually vote, but you'd give up the decisive single-party government first past the post produces, and hand more structural power to party organizations. So this I don't actually see happening. More power to structural party organization. You have more parties. You have a more diversity of vote. And so if a party does something you don't like, there's usually another similar party that you can vote for. So it leads to better representation. The decisive single party government, I mean, compromise is key to a lot in democracy. And having a single party that gets power can just kind of do what they want, I don't know if I agree with that. I'd prefer them to have to compromise. Whether that's worth it depends on whether you think the bigger democratic problem is unrepresentative results or unaccountability, unstable government. And Canadians have repeatedly proven divided on exactly that question. Unrepresentative results or unaccountability and unstable government. I think the mixed member proportional does pretty good on accountability. Unstable government, I don't know, like we've seen that in Israel, right? Where Benjamin Netanyahu had to lean into some of their more radical parties in order to make a government, and that in turn made him more radical. Like he had to take more radical stances in order to get them in the party. And so like I can and that there was like several elections in a row. So I see the unstable element. I still think that the mixed member proportional system just adds more representation, adds a diversity of thought to a democracy. Anyway, and Canadians have repeatedly proven divided on exactly that question. Okay. So there are real challenges that come up with this system. I largely think we can fix most of them, and the benefits outweigh the ones we can't.